Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Assembly of Yahusha. Our Bible study topic for today: the Philippines is not the far country from the east, in Isaiah 46, verse 11. Now, as you all know, Isaiah 46:11 is one of the most favorite passages used by the Iglesia Ni Cristo to supposedly prove Felix Y. Manalo is indeed a messenger of God. Because according to their publication, the identity of the messenger is revealed in Isaiah 46:11. And so they say, if you look at how the bird of prey is described in Isaiah 46:11, it describes the origin and the work. And this was supposedly fulfilled in the person and ministry of Felix Y. Manalo. So let's go ahead and take a look at the passage in question and also read the context. We'll include verses 10 all the way to 13, declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. Calling a bird of prey from the east, a man who executes my counsel from a far country. Indeed, I have spoken it. I will also bring it to pass. I have purposed it. I will also do it. Listen to me, you stubborn-hearted who are far from righteousness. I bring my righteousness near. It shall not be far off. My salvation shall not linger, and I will place salvation in Zion for Israel, my glory. So that's the content of Isaiah 46:10 down to 13. When we read this passage, it speaks about someone who is called a bird of prey. So he's being summoned by Yahuwah, calling a bird of prey from the east. So he's going to come from the east, and the Bible specifies from a far country. And so this individual, this quote-unquote messenger, is likened to a bird of prey, will come from a far country from the east. And what will he do? He will execute the counsel or the plan of God. And when he executes the counsel or plan of God, it brings about righteousness. It brings righteousness near and brings about salvation. And so this is Isaiah 46:10 to 13. Now, when you read this passage, it becomes very clear when you study the context, when you study the history, when you study the biblical lexicon, that the bird of prey mentioned who will come from a far country in the east is Cyrus, king of Persia. I say this because it's biblically obvious. In fact, nobody believes that this bird of prey is other than the Cyrus, king of Persia. And so many people understand this to be quite obvious, except for the Iglesia Ni Cristo. And so when they receive questions about Isaiah 46:11, they often get the question, well, isn't that fulfilled in Cyrus, the king of Persia? And so the INC media production crew put together this Bible study from one of their programs, That's in the Bible, hosted by Robert Pelin. And the question they're going to ask is, who is the bird of prey in Isaiah 46:11? And so this came from Russell Brooker. And so this person asks the question, my pastor told me that the one prophesied in Isaiah 46:11 is not Felix Manalo. Pastor is correct, but Cyrus. Why don't you believe that Cyrus is the fulfillment of the prophecy in Isaiah 46:11? And so in INC fashion, Robert Pelin begins to twist the meaning of Isaiah 46:11 to make it appear, to make it seem that it is fulfilled or was fulfilled in the person and ministry of Felix Y. Manalo. And so we're going to see how Robert Pelin does this, how the Iglesia Ni Cristo will twist Isaiah 46:11 to teach that the bird of prey was fulfilled in the person and ministry of Felix Y. Manalo. And so when That's in the Bible proceeded, Brother Bob, I'm just going to quote, this is verbatim from the program itself. I'm not going to play the actual video, but Brother Bob says, dear friends, we should notice three conditions the Bible gives in order to describe this particular servant of God. And so he begins with saying that there are three conditions. If you study the book of Isaiah 46:11, when you study the three conditions, it's going to reveal that it could not be other than Felix Y. Manalo. And so the first one is the place of origin. That's the first. What was it? He says a far country in the east or far east. The second, the task that was given to accomplish, what was it? To execute God's counsel from bringing his righteousness, by bringing his righteousness near to people. God's righteousness, as we have learned from other lessons, Romans 1:16 and 17, is the gospel. So his role is to preach the gospel. And third, the people that God will send this servant to, who are they? They are those who are far from righteousness or far away from the true gospel. So those are the three main reasons for why they believe that the person in question in Isaiah 46:11 could not be Cyrus. Instead, it must be Felix Y. Manalo. So today, we're going to look at the first one, just the first one, okay? The place of origin, because it mentions far country in the east or far east. Now, I want you to take a look at this screenshot. This is from their Bible study program, and if you want, you can watch it. It's from the website incmedia.org, and you can just plug in Isaiah 46:11, and it will take you to their Bible study. And I took a screenshot of what he said and what they placed on the screen. It says place of origin, a far country in the east or far east. Now, here's something I want you to look at. Observe the screen. Do you see it? Here's a question I want to pose. Can you spot the double twist in this screenshot? Because we all know the Iglesia de Cristo, well, they're pretty skilled when it comes to twisting scriptures. And even in this screenshot, we can find two twistings of what they come up with, how they misinterpreted Isaiah 46:11. Did you spot the first one? What's the first one? First one is the word in. He mentions a far country in the east, but it does not say a far country in the east, does it? What does it actually say? It says a far country from the east. You might say, what's the big deal, Brother John? There's no big difference whether or not it's from the east or in the east. Well, actually, it is pretty significant. Keep in mind, when the Bible mentions from or in, these are prepositions. And in Hebrew, prepositions are determined by the prefix that is used right before the word is actually used. So if the preposition is indicated by the letter bet, it means in, like in the east. But if it uses mim, it is from or out of the east. It turns out in Isaiah 46:10 or 46:11, it uses mim. This is why it's mim Mizrach. When you look up top, because Mizrach is the root word, it's the lexicon itself or the word itself, but how it's used and how it is parsed, it uses the mim in front of it. This is why it's translated from the east or out of the east. And so when you twist it and when you change it from to in, it actually shifts the reader's attention and shifts the meaning of what the Bible actually is trying to say. Because if you read it as in the east, it means the bird of prey and his work are situated within an eastern region. And so it is as though where the place of origin of this bird of prey, that's also where the work of the bird of prey is going to take place. If we understand it as the bird of prey is in the east, but it's not in the east, it's from the east. And so from the east means Yahuwah calls the bird of prey out of an eastern country to carry out his purpose. And so the work to be done is not in the east. The work to be done is somewhere else, but it will be executed by someone who came from the east. So the work of the bird of prey is not in the far east. And this is further clarified because the word from is connected with the word calling. And so the verb calling together with from gives the image of Yahuwah calling someone from one place to act elsewhere. And so the action will take place not in the east. The man will come from the east, but the action will take place outside of the east, or it's going to take place somewhere else. And so when we read the passage, calling a bird of prey from the east, the man who executes my counsel from a far country. And so this bird of prey is going to come from a far country in the east, and he's going to execute the counsel of God, and the result will be salvation in Zion for Israel, my glory. And so the beneficiaries of this bird of prey, who will do the work of the counsel of God, or the plan of God for salvation, is going to benefit Israel. And it's going to take place for the benefit of Zion. And we know the time frame of this prophecy is during a time when the people of God, when Judah together with Israel, when Israel is held captive where? In Babylon. So the salvation in context is salvation from Babylon. This fits well Cyrus, because we know Cyrus came from the eastern Persian sphere, the eastern side, and is called by Yahweh to advance westward to conquer Babylon and facilitate the restoration of Jerusalem. So the eastern land is his point of departure, hence from a far country in the east, but it's not the primary location of the work assigned to the bird of prey. This is why it's not a far country in the east, but a far country from the east. So that's the first twist. And I just wanted you to notice that, because it makes a big difference, does it not? All right? Now I want you to see the second twist. Can you see the second twist? Do you see it? What's the second twist? Yeah, far east in all caps. There's a big difference, beloved friends, between far east in all caps and far east in lowercase. There's a big difference. What's the difference? The lowercase far east is a descriptive phrase describing how far it is in the direction of the east. And so it's relative to a source or a starting point. And so it's not referring to a fixed place, because it's always changing depending on your location. That's what it means when we say far east, lowercase caps. But when we say upper case caps, far east in uppercase, if it's all capitalized, it functions as a singular proper noun. And so there's a difference between a descriptive phrase and a proper noun. What the INC does, what Robert Palin did, is he twisted the meaning of far east as a descriptive phrase and converts it into a proper noun, spelled in caps or capitalized far east. When you do that, it's specifying a geographical toponym. In other words, it names one specific distinct region that is man-made. It's a man-made designation, and it does not come from the Holy Bible. And so what man has decided to do long after Isaiah is to come up with a map, and they designated certain toponyms, these designated like Near East and Far East, and this becomes like a proper noun. That's what Far East means. This is what the understanding of the Iglesia ni Cristo is for Far East. It's a fixed geographical spot. And so when you come across Far East spelled in capitals, like what you see here, it is a fixed geographical spot. But what you find in the Bible is not a fixed geographical spot, because it's not Far East in uppercase. It's Far East in lower case. So the phrase Far East, lowercase, refers to direction and does not refer to a fixed geographical spot, and is applied relative to a reference point. To give you an idea, an example, so you can grasp the idea and wrap your mind around it, I want to give you the following example. For example, from our California central office, the Philippine branch is the Far East one. Does that make sense? Makes sense, right? Because it's in the eastward direction, and Philippines is pretty far. And so you can say that the Philippines is in the far east, is the far east one. But is it also correct to say the London branch is the far east one? Yeah, it's still correct because relative to California, it's still far in the direction of the far east. Well, how about this one, New York? Is it correct to say from our California central office, the New York branch is the far east one? Can we say it? Is this also correct? Yes, because when we look at the descriptive phrase, lowercase far east, it's not a specific fixed spot on earth. It's always relative to a reference point. And so it is appropriate to be able to say New York, the New York branch is the far east one. You can even say Texas is the far east one, or Oklahoma is the far east one, okay? Because it's all relative. However, when you add the following from our California office, the New York branch is the far east, all caps, far east one. Is that appropriate? That's no longer appropriate. That's wrong, because when you have uppercase far and uppercase east, far east, it becomes a what kind of noun is it? A proper noun. It's a proper noun. What is it? A toponym. And so it becomes that designated spot that man came up with and designated for himself, and it's not biblical. Now, when you read scripture, Isaiah 46, 10 to 13, it does not say far east, does it? In fact, it says far country, right? From the east. It does not say far east, but a far country from the east. So the bird of prey will not come from, quote unquote, the far east, spelled with capital F, capital E. He will come from a far country in the east. There's a big difference between the two. And so I just want to point that out, because in the argument that Robert Pauline is going to give us, it's going to fall and collapse because of the knowledge we just presented to you. And so the question he asks is, where is Cyrus from? And then he quotes Ezra 1:1. Now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia. And then he says Cyrus was a Persian. And this is his conclusion verbatim. He says, in fact, he was the king of Persia. And Persia is not a far country in the east, as the prophecy describes. Persia is in the Near East. And so in his argument, he's saying this could not be Cyrus, because the Bible mentions far east in his understanding of far east being capital F, capital E, far east. And so because that's his understanding of far country in the east, in Isaiah 46:11, he says it cannot be Cyrus, because Persia is in the Near East. But the Bible doesn't even mention Near East. It doesn't mention Far East. It doesn't mention Middle East. It just says East. Right? So he is using this label, these toponyms that man has come up with long after the Bible was written. And he uses Far East, capital F, capital E, as a fixed geographical spot. But take note, brethren, there is no Hebrew technical term that means Near East, Middle East, or Far East. There's none. This is why it's wrong for Robert Pauline to say that Persia is not in the East and it's in the Near East. That's incorrect. It shows that he lacks understanding of what East means when it's used in the Holy Bible. So Persia indeed is in the East. Well, how far in the East is Persia? Robert Pauline also mentions that Persia is not a far country in the East. What do you think? Is that an appropriate statement? Is that correct? Is it correct to say that Persia is not a far country in the East? Well, we know Persia is in the East because when we look at the map, there's Jerusalem. You see Jerusalem, right? Well, what is towards the East? What do you see in the green? The Persian Empire. And so is the Persian Empire east of Jerusalem? What is your answer? Yeah. And so Persia is east of Jerusalem. Now, the next question is, well, is Persia a far country in the East? What do you think? Well, what is considered far? Let's take a look at Deuteronomy 28, 49 and 50. Yahuwah will bring a nation against you from afar, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flies, a nation whose language you will not understand, a nation of fierce countenance. The Bible speaks of a nation prophesied by Yahuwah, whom he will use to punish, to discipline his rebellious nation Israel. And who was the fulfillment of this nation? It's both Babylon and Assyria, because Yahuwah God used both of them to punish Israel. First, the northern kingdom. Syria uses the northern kingdom. Next, the Babylonian kingdom to punish Judah. And so Babylon, Assyria, they are both considered a nation from afar, from the end of the earth. And so as far as the Bible is concerned, is Babylon, is Assyria, are they regarded as a far country? Yes. And so when you think of the phrase from afar, from the end of the earth, the phrase end of the earth or ends of the earth pertains to far away places. In other translations, the Bible uses far away, ends of the earth. And so Babylon or Assyria, take your pick, are described as being a far nation or far country. And they're both in the east. Let's go back at the map. There's Jerusalem, there's Israel. Where is Assyria? Where's Babylon? Assyria is up there. Babylon is over there. You see it. Are they east of Jerusalem? East of Israel? Yes. Are they considered a far country? Yes. Therefore, according to the Holy Bible, both Assyria and Babylon are far countries, far nations in the east. If Assyria and Babylon are far countries in the east, how much more Persia, right? And so Persia must also be a far country in the east. And so Robert Pauline's statement, Persia is not a far country in the east, this is just flat out wrong. What it should say is Persia is a far country in the east. This is why you can find books that describe Persia as Far East, stories Far East Persia, because it's known as a far country in the east. This is why it's wrong for Robert Pauline to say it cannot be Cyrus, because Cyrus is in the Near East. Oh, there's no Near East in the Bible. Well, Cyrus is in Persia, and Persia is not in the Far East. Yes, it is. It's a far country in the east. But then again, what they're going to do next is going to throw at you what we call the INC Mizrach argument. How many of you have heard of the Mizrach argument? Because when you look at Isaiah 46, 10 to 13, and look at the word east, you see it? When you look at the Hebrew, it is the word Mizrach. It's one of the most favorite words, one of their favorite Hebrew words. This is why some members of the Iglesia Ni Cristo in the Philippines, they name their kids after Mizrach. Or they name their businesses after Mizrach, right? Because they think Mizrach, when you read Mizrach, oh, it's the Philippines. But it's not. And so they use Mizrach here, but what does it actually mean? What does Mizrach mean? Well, it depends on what word is used that is attached to Mizrach. And so it could mean sunrise or east if the word Mizrach comes with the word sun. But most of the time, the word Mizrach comes without the word sun. It's Mizrach by itself. In Isaiah 46:11, it's Mizrach by itself. And so what does it mean? It means simply the east. Not far east, but the east. Okay? So Mizrach means a direction. It is to or toward the place of sunrise. It's to the east or eastward. And so it's not a fixed place. It is a direction. Which direction? Towards the east. And so it's not a fixed place. And notice the word far is not found in Mizrach. In fact, when you look at Mizrach, that is used in Isaiah 46:11, Mizrach means from the east. It does not say far east. Mizrach does not mean far east. But then again, they're going to jump to the Dictionary of the Bible by William Smith. Perhaps you've come across this dictionary. because in this dictionary, which is their favorite dictionary, and unfortunately, they misuse even the dictionaries that they present, which they think is going to bolster their argument, when in fact it actually does the opposite. It destroys their argument. So they like to use, or I should rather say misuse, a dictionary of the Bible by William Smith. And they look at east, because in Hebrew there are two words that kind of describe east. One is kedem, one is Mizrach. You see that? And so kedem, they like to cite, properly means that which is before or in front of a person. And kedem is used in a strictly geographical sense to describe a spot or country immediately before another in an easterly direction. And so according to Dr. Smith, when kedem is used, its application is different from how Mizrach is used. They both mean east, but the application can be different. And so for kedem, it's used strictly as, it's strictly used geographically. It's used in a strictly geographical sense. This is why it can refer to lands immediately eastward of Palestine, namely Arabia, Mesopotamia, and Babylonia. And they even say it can be used as a proper name because it's used in a geographical sense. And so like the land of Kedem, capital K, Kedem. And so when Kedem is used, you can use it to specify like a place. But when Mizrach is used, he says it's used of the far east because its direction is towards the sunrise, with a less definite signification. Take note, in the definition that Smith gives for Mizrach, it does not say far east in all caps, does it? It's lowercase far east. Mizrach is not used for a fixed place far east, capital F, capital E, but is used to describe a direction toward the east. And so the question now becomes, how far toward the east must it be for it to be called Mizrach? Because according to Robert Bellin, Persia cannot be the far east because even though it is east, it's pretty near Israel. When you think about it, it's really not near Israel, right? But he has in his mind the man-made designation, the toponym of Far East, which is not found in the Holy Bible. And so how far toward the east must it be for it to be Mizrach? Well, Mizrach is used of the Far East with a less definite signification. Do you see that? Do you know what Smith is telling us here? He's saying Mizrach is not a fixed geographical point or place. This is why you cannot say, aha, it's Mizrach, it must be far east or in the Philippines. No, it's telling us when it says Mizrach, it's toward the direction of the sun, but it can be near, it can be in the middle, it can be far. In other words, Babylonia or Mesopotamia can be considered as Mizrach. And what is the biblical proof? That Mizrach does not mean far east, meaning the far east Asian countries that we know of today, that includes the Philippines. Well, let's take a look at 1 Chronicles 7:28. The territory which took and settled in, included Bethel and the towns round it as far east, Mizrach as Naaran, and as far west as Gezer, and the towns round it. It also included the cities of Shechem and Aiah and the towns around them. So what we find here is the scope of land, the land of Ephraim. So Ephraim was given a plot of land according to the promises, right? And so when it was time to distribute the property given to each of the tribes, this is Ephraim's territory, and it mentions the boundary is towards the east. How far towards the east? Far east. You see that? Mizrach. So Naaran is in the far east. Naaran is in Mizrach. You see that, right? And so Naaran is in the far east, Well, where exactly is Naaran? Is it in the Philippines? Let's find out. Here's Ephraim. And so we know Ephraim is west of the Jordan River. West of the Jordan River, it's still in Israel. Have you seen it? Naaran? It's right there. Naaran is in Israel. Naaran is west of the Jordan River. It's not even east of the Jordan River. And so here, Mizrach is used to describe a place, Naaran, which is in Mizrach. It's Mizrach because it's Mizrach of Dan. It's Mizrach of all these other places west of it. Okay? Now, what else? Joshua 4:19. The people crossed the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month and made camp at Gilgal, east Mizrach of Jericho. And so the Bible tells us here's Gilgal, and Gilgal is Mizrach of Jericho. Is Gilgal in the Philippines? Of course not. It's far from the Philippines. It's still in Israel, right? Here's Joshua. The other half of Manasseh, the Reubenites and the Gadites, had received the inheritance that Moses had given them, east Mizrach of the Jordan, as he, the servant of Yahweh, had assigned it to them. Again, the Bible tells us when it comes to the land given to the Reubenites and to the Gadites, it's east Mizrach of Jordan. Does it extend all the way to the Philippines? No, because Manasseh and Gad and Reuben occupy these lands, and it doesn't even reach Babylon, does it? And so we find here examples of Mizrach, but it's all in Israel. It doesn't go beyond Israel. But Mizrach is still used because Mizrach is a direction. It is used as a word to describe a direction relative to a spot or a reference point. The reference point is not fixed. Therefore, Mizrach is not a fixed place. It is a direction. Here's another one. Numbers. And those encamping before the tabernacle eastward, before the tent of meeting, at the east, Mizrach, are Moses and Aaron and his sons. Again, Mizrach is referred to as the place of Aaron and Moses in the tabernacle. So here is how the tabernacle is set up, and Aaron and Moses and the priests, when they camp, that is where Mizrach is. And when they camp, they can go from place to place. And so Mizrach is always changing. This is why Mizrach is not a fixed place. Mizrach is not describing Far East, because all the examples I've given you were all in Israel. And so it cannot be Far East in the way people understand Far East today, the geopolitical term Far East, the toponym Far East. That's not what Mizrach is. Mizrach is not capital F, far, capital E, east. It's not that. And so when you think of Persia, you're right, it's not. Robert Pauline, you're correct. Robert Pauline. Persia is not in the Far East, capital F, capital E. But Persia is in the Far East, the way the Bible describes Far East. And so the place of origin of the birth, the place of origin of the bird of prey cannot be the Philippines. Now, you might think that's a shocking statement, but it's true. Because when you study, and this is really, we've discussed all of this just to say this conclusion. The place of origin of the bird of prey cannot be the Philippines. Well, can't the Philippines be Mizrach of Jerusalem? It can, right? Is it possible for the Philippines to be Mizrach? Could it be the place of origin of the bird of prey? Yeah, it could be. But if you look at the other descriptions of this bird of prey, we're going to be able to conclude without a shadow of a doubt, it cannot be the Philippines. I'm going to show that to you. This is the most important part of our study. This is it right here. Isaiah 46, 10 to 13, calling a bird of prey from the east, from a far country. So we know this bird of prey is a servant, right? And this servant of God is going to carry out the counsel of God, his plan of God, right? The plan of God he's going to fulfill. And he's going to come from the east, a far country in the east. And so, well, who is this bird of prey? Well, let's read the book of Isaiah 41, 2 down to 4. Who raised up one from the east, Mizrach, who in righteousness called him to his feet, who gave the nations before him, and made him rule over kings, who gave them as the dust to his sword, as driven stubble to his bow, who pursued them and passed safely by the way that he had not gone with his feet, who has performed and done it, calling the generations from the beginning. I, Yahweh, am the first, and with the last I am he. And so here is Yahuwah. He's telling us in Isaiah that he is almighty. He's different from the false idols of Babylon because he can tell you what will happen from the beginning, what the end will be. He knows the whole scope of human history. He knows the beginning, he knows the end from the beginning, okay? And so he's telling us he's going to raise someone up from the east, Mizrach. And so it's the same term. This bird of prey who will come from Mizrach is the same bird of prey who is described in Isaiah 41, 2. He's raised up from the east. Yahuwah is the one who raised him up. Yahuwah is the one who called him. That's why the Bible says, who in righteousness called him to his feet. And so this is the bird of prey. He will come from Mizrach. Well, what will he do? The Bible says, who gave the nations before him and made him rule over kings, who gave them as the dust to his sword, as driven stubble to his bow. And so this bird of prey is a warrior. He is one who fights with a sword, who uses a bow. He is a powerful military man. And because he is a powerful military man, Yahweh God will use him to subdue nations, because it says here, who gave the nations before him and made him rule over kings. And so Yahuwah is going to cause all these nations and kings to be under him. He is going to subdue all these nations and all these kings because of the help of Yahuwah. Well, do you know who that is? Well, let's find out. Thus says Yahuwah to his anointed, to Cyrus. Beloved brethren, I don't see Felix there. It doesn't mention Felix, but it does mention Cyrus. I mean, how obvious does it need to get? This is as obvious as day, right? Thus says Yahuwah to his anointed, to Cyrus. It doesn't say to Felix. It doesn't say to Eranio. It doesn't say to Eduardo. It says to Cyrus. Yahuwah himself gives the name of the one he's raising up from the east. Thus says Yahuwah to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have upheld. Does that sound familiar? To subdue nations before him and loose the armor of kings, to open before him the double doors, so that the gates will not be shut. And so the one who is being raised from the east, Mizrach, who will conquer nations and kings, is Cyrus, because Yahuwah says that's the work he's going to do. Subdue nations before him and loose the armor of kings. Take note, he will come from Mizrach. Now, of course, INC will say, well, that's Felix Manalo. Did he use a sword? Well, he preached the word of God, which is like a sword, right? Did he subdue kings? Well, in a way, because you can, the preachers of false religions are like kings. And so they will use all these symbolic things and say, well, that's still Felix Manalo, because it mentions Mizrach, and Mizrach is Far East. Again, we showed you that's a wrong conception of Mizrach. Mizrach simply means a direction. We know that this person who will come from the east, we know Persia qualifies as Mizrach. It's Mizrach of Jerusalem. Okay? Well, how do we know? It cannot be the Philippines. You know why? Isaiah 41:25. We read 41:2-4 about this man, this bird of prey from the east, Mizrach, who will conquer nations, right? Well, how else does the Bible describe the place of origin? Let's read. I have raised up one from, what does it say? The north. Oh boy. And he shall come from the rising, Mizrach, of the sun, and he shall call on my name, and he shall come up, and he shall come against princes as though mortar. as the potter treads clay, who has declared from the beginning that we may know. I put the verse 26 there to let you know that Yahweh was emphasizing his unique difference between himself and the false idols. The false idols cannot prophesy, but Yahuwah's prophesied, and in his prophecy, he even includes the name. That's why he says, who has declared from the beginning that we may know. And in his prophecy, he says, I have raised up one from the north. Well, which is this one from the north? He's also the one from the rising of the sun, or from Mizrach, from the Far East. And so this person, this bird of prey, will come from the Far East, or he's going to come from the east, and he's also going to come from the north. And what will he do? He shall come up against princes as the mortar, as the potter treads clay. And Yahuwah declared this from the beginning. And this fits the verbiage of Isaiah 46, declaring the end from the beginning. And from ancient times, things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, calling a bird of prey from the east. The man who executes my counsel from a far country, in that I've spoken it, I will also bring it to pass. And so this bird of prey, in Isaiah 46:11, he will come from Mizrach, but he will also come from the north. Well, I mean, if the bird of prey will come from both the east and from the north of Israel, could it be the Philippines? Could it be Persia? Well, let's find out. Well, take a look at Persia and how they conquered the nations. You see the green? Is Persia north of Israel? Yeah. Is Persia east of Israel? Yes. It's a far country in the east. Persia is Mizrach. Mizrach of Jerusalem. Because if the places east of Jordan is called Mizrach, how much more Persia? Persia is east. Mizrach of Jerusalem, and it's also north of Jerusalem. Well, how about the Philippines? Is the Philippines Mizrach of Jerusalem? Yeah. But is it north of Jerusalem? Here's Jerusalem. There's Israel. Have you identified Philippines? Philippines over there. Is it north of Israel? No. Philippines is not north of Israel. The far country from the east in Isaiah 46:11 is not the Philippines. The far country from the east in Isaiah 46:11 is Persia, because Persia is both east, Mizrach, and north of Israel. Do you see why the bird of prey in Isaiah 46:11 is not Felix Manalo, but Cyrus of Persia? Do you see why the far country in the east cannot be the Philippines? Because for it to be the Philippines has to also be north of Israel. And we know that is not the case and never will be the case. Unless, of course, somehow in the future, the Philippines is going to occupy all those lands, occupying as north of Israel, which we know is never going to happen. And if it does happen, well, it cannot be Felix Manalo, because when it happened, that was not the case. That's why it's impossible for the Philippines to be the far country in the east in Isaiah 46 and the verses 11. And so, the first argument given by Robert Pelin is completely wrong. He twists it, first of all, to mention in the east, and he uses far east, capital F, right? Capital E, far east. Do you see how he twists it? Do you see how the English increases twists Isaiah 46:11? But we all know they're not going to get away with it. We're going to expose all the false doctrines of the Iglesia ni Cristo in the Assembly of Yahusha. So next time, we're going to examine number 2. Because in number 2, Robert Pelin says the task given to the bird of prey is to execute God's counsel by bringing his righteousness near to people, which he says is the gospel, which is really interesting. And we're going to look at that in our next Bible study sometime, perhaps in a couple of days, or maybe the next day or two. Anyways, thank you so much for joining us in our Bible study for today. We do hope that you will follow the Assembly of Yahusha on Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify. That is all. May Yahweh Abba and Yahushua HaMashiach bless all of us.